Jenny from ParaAmera, and today we will be doing a podcast with John Bullard over his book, A Peek Through the Veil. Make sure to like and subscribe. Hello, John.
How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me. The last time that I talked to you, um, you asked some of the best questions that I've been interviewed. I'm not just saying that to make you feel better, but you kind of caught me off guard on a couple questions. So I like being caught off guard when I have to sit there and think about something. So I'm excited to interview with you again.
All right. So today we're going to be talking about your book, A Peek Through the Veil. So I did read this. I actually read this before I went into surgery. So I was hit with that, and then I was hit with COVID. So fun mix. So I just got now the opportunity to ask you questions about your book.
That's awesome. Hey, better than ever. And I'm glad that it was at least a decent book. So that you didn't say you had COVID and then you went through that and then you had to read my book. So it's all three bad things. So at least that was a positive, right?
No, I actually read the book and then I reread it for this so that I could remember some things that I missed out on. And I have a whole bunch of
Yeah.
questions to ask you about it.
Well, dive in. Sometimes, it's funny whenever I wrote the book, and again, I don't read a lot of books,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I don't consider myself a great writer, but since I've been in the field for so long, I knew that I wanted to put some of the things that I've experienced and learned throughout the years down on paper. So when I'm dead and gone, this can be just something for people to read. And again, there's mistakes in the book and it's not perfect, but it's my thoughts, my experiences, and what I've gathered over a decade in the field.
Right. And that's what makes it really personal as well. That's like the best benefit about creating a book that is one of your own. And
Right.
so I think you actually kind of answered my first question because I was going to start off really basic with that. And I was going to be like, all right, so John, why did you write this book? That's what I was
Well,
going to come in with.
no, that's fine. And so, I mean, I had the idea for a long time and I knew in my head, I wanted to talk not just about like one story. I knew I had to break it up into chapters. So I'm a person, whenever I think about a project, I want to dissect it. So I have a little notebook and I just broke it down chapter by chapter and kind of made it make sense in my head. And I picked out a couple chapters that were just fun for me, like Doppelganger is a
Right.
chapter in the book, which is unique. It didn't get talked about a lot in the paranormal field, but I think there's some relevance to it. So that was kind of a fun chapter, but it was kind of intimidating to write about because I didn't know a lot about it. So that was one of the chapters I wrote last. I just wrote, obviously, like the house in between. That was an easy chapter to write because I've been doing that house for over a decade. So I had a lot to say about that. Um, and I knew that I wanted to write the book for people who don't like to read. It's the same thing whenever I started out doing the paranormal. When we did Smoke and Mirrors Paranormal, we used to investigate. We had a website.
Mhm.
We would go to a location. We would review the evidence, video and audio. We would put it on the website. We'd do like 10 to 15-second clips of video. Same thing with the audio. So people could click, listen, be like, oh, that's cool, and then move on. Because I wanted to reach a broader audience than just paranormal people. I wanted people who were not into the paranormal, to look at this stuff and think that's neat, and understand that I'm authentic. What we do is real. So that's kind of the same thing with the book. I wanted it to be a simple read. I wanted it to be heavy visual, which there's a lot of art in the book, which we'll talk about later on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wanted it to be simple. I wanted people to take something away from the book. Like if you read the book from front to end, you take away one or two things you thought was interesting or unique. I mean, I feel like I've done my job.
Yeah. I noticed that when I did read the book, the way you wrote this is actually really intriguing to me because I'm actually a person, I don't like reading, but if I find something interesting in it, I will read the whole thing and you will not stop me. And I read this book front to back and I just could not put it down. And I also
Thank you.
have dyslexia. So sometimes it's hard for me to read certain things. And I went through this book like a madman. I thought it was so intriguing and so fun. I love that we could stop and like look at the you have really really cool images in the book. And I found it so fun to
Yes.
kind of take like a mental break to see some of these pages with that imaging. And I thought that was so cool and fascinating about the book. And so this
Thank you. Yeah, that was
actually
that was important.
to my next question. Where did
Okay.
you get these images from? Or
Right here.
right there?
Right here. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it started out, that was a big part of it. What my process for the book was I broke down the chapters, and I knew exactly what I wanted to write. And then the second thing I actually did was I knew that each chapter had to have an image attached to it. So the art was actually the second thing I did. So I worked on the art before I even started writing. And I knew that I wanted to. In my theory is less is more. I
Okay.
don't like things to be overdone. So I knew I wanted everything to be charcoal. I wanted it to be rough and raw. I didn't want it to be like a lot of color or anything like that. So I had ideas in my head and visuals of what I wanted, and then I started doing images. Like there's a witch that's in the book, right?
Right.
I pull her up. Where's she at? There she is. So yeah, the witch right here.
Right.
So that's something that I had a dream about as a child, a recurring dream about a witch. So what I did was I wrote down paragraphs, like the scenario in my head, and I described it as detailed as possible. And I started doing that for each image. And then I went on the search for an artist,
Okay.
and I looked for a lot of artists locally in Mississippi where I'm at, and I talked to 5 or 6 different people, but they just didn't mesh with what I was doing.
Mhm.
So they're great artists, but they just didn't get what I was trying to do. So I moved on, and then I started looking on the internet and like Facebook, Instagram, whatnot. And I had a few people that I talked to. One was from the UK. I think one was from Germany, actually.
Hmm.
But then I found a guy who was from Chile randomly. I
Okay.
typed in haunted. I typed in haunted art on Instagram, and he wasn't doing like haunted images, but he did like charcoal stuff. And
Okay.
I liked the way he freehanded stuff, and he did some live videos, so I could see him paint or sketch. So I messaged him on Instagram, and I gave him a paragraph of the witch actually, and I said, "This is kind of what I'm thinking. I do paranormal stuff. I'm writing a book. I need somebody to do some images." So he said, "Let me give me a day or two. Let me sketch this out and see what I come back with." And the first time he came back, that witch is almost identical to what you see in the book, and I knew instantly like this is my guy. So we connected, and originally I was going to do I think 12 photos in the book. We ended up with I think 33 images because I got out of control. But he is fantastic, and what's cool about social media is he's from Chile. Obviously, I'm from the United States. We
Mhm.
have never spoken. We've only connected through Instagram typing, and I've sent him paragraphs. He's translated it. Some of the images we had to go back and forth on, but everything that's in the book, his name's Andres Blanco, and he's truly incredible. And it's neat that we have social media now because we're able to do all that stuff and we can speak to each other.
I'm so happy you know about Instagram because I'm not even I know how to use that app.
Yeah.
But honestly, that's really cool. I'm glad that you connected. I do have another question for you about your drawings, in fact. Um, I I do some drawings myself actually, and I wanted to know if you guys actually had you guys came up with more and more sketches that you guys had to kind of collaborate and go through. Did you guys have to go through that process at all? Like where he'd make like a really cool sketch and then you'd have to be like, "Oh, I don't know about that one." Or he'd make like another one it's kind of similar. And if you guys had to go through that choosing process.
Yes. And I had to learn it was okay to critique, because I'm always kind of a yes person and like I don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. Because the
Yeah.
first couple images that he did was they were just spot on, they were really good. But for example, like the doppelganger image that's in the book, that was a really like in-depth image and I wanted it to be right. So, obviously he had to sketch my face first. And the first sketch he did, I wasn't feeling it. But that one went back, I think, 5 or 6 images and pictures. That took probably one of the longest sketches that he did. And it's funny, there's a sketch in the book from the house in between with a big chandelier above my head. I'm in a chair and there's a chandelier. And to me, that was one of the most difficult pictures to like portray in a paragraph. But he just knocked that out the first time. Like he sent it over in like a day and a half, and it was just perfect. So you never know. Like some of the images I thought were going to be easier were more difficult, and then vice versa. Some of the difficult ones I thought were just easy peasy. But to answer that long winded, learn that it's it's okay to critique an artist.
Yes. Honestly, I really do love the art in this book, and I'm it's so happy to see people collaborating, especially when there are such cool artworks. Like, for instance, this one right here. I just flipped to a random page, and honestly, these artworks are just fascinating and amazing for you guys to collaborate together and work with.
Well, one of the things on, and the last thing on the art, because I'm long winded and I like to talk. Um, I wanted to. The one thing in the book that I didn't get to do, which I'll say
Okay?
this now because I've never said this to anybody, equipment was an important chapter to me because I wanted to highlight the things that I think are important in the field. Sometimes we get over techie, and there's so much stuff that's out there now that to use. So I wanted to piece together the pieces that I've had success with. That I think if you have those pieces, you can do a full-fledged investigation and have really good success. My idea in the book, maybe somebody can steal this now, was I wanted to take each device and do a schematic drawing, as in like you break it up, you
Yeah.
blow it up and you do like schematics. But he didn't have the time to do it, and it just was taking too long. And I had a deadline for the book, and it didn't work out. So we just did rough sketches, and they turned out great. But that's one thing that I wish I could have done and had more time with. I was going to do schematics of all the devices.
Okay. I'm going to be honest, the devices that I did see in the book, I honestly thought that they were drawn amazingly.
Well, there you go.
So, I mean, I was honestly like the style like changed up a bit, and I mean like you could tell that, but honestly it stood out more to me that it was different, which made those pages
Okay,
really pop in my eyes. But that may
well,
just be
good.
I like that. So,
I'll take it.
um something I did want to point out about your book is that to me it kind of reminds me of a field guide or like a journal. So this is like where someone's kind of kept it and like they've taken notes over like a long period of time, and you can see really detailed in especially when you go and talk about the electronics that you guys use. You see that it has like the image and that way people get like a visual of what this thing actually is, which is something a lot of people tend to not do. So I will go and like we'll be like we'll excuse me, I'm can't think of the word, but we'll talk to other people and they'll be like, "Oh, you should use this," and I'm like, "Okay, but what does that look like?" It doesn't kind of like it doesn't put
Right,
that image in your head. Now you're thinking of this random, what could be like obscure machinery. So
right.
I really
Well, and
like how you guys put those images in for a visual.
yeah, for sure. And the whole point of the equipment chapter is to, I think, to understand like what you're using. If you don't understand like the REM pod, for example, understand like what can give it a false trigger, like key fobs and walkie talkies, and just small things like that, or like the spirit box. I understand what it's used for, which is the white noise. You can hear spirits talk through it. But in the book, I tell you what we use it for, which is an agitation and this, that, and the other. So it just gives a perspective of something that we've used those tools in the field and the positive responses that we've got at several locations. So try to set people up for success.
Yeah, I honestly think it's so cool. And I mean, especially for you to put those items in your book as well, it also lets new paranormal people or even people coming back into the field, they kind of get like a review on what new things have come out. Because I know that older people, such as my dad, he only had like a recorder, right? And for all these people who like may be coming back into the paranormal field, all these new equipment you have kind of laid out for them, and so it's kind of saying like, hey, these are some things that we use that you could possibly use as well if you want to be really interested in the paranormal. And I think
Yeah,
that's kind of good too.
well, thank you. I think that's yeah, that was the goal of it, and those are the basics, and like even the EDI that does temperature and whatnot, like those are tools that are newer to the field, and I guess the spirit box really depending on when you started doing paranormal, but yeah, I mean, I think those are the basic necessities that you need, and you can definitely get gadgeted up, and there's thousands of things that are coming out, and they're all subjective, but we're all learning, we're all trying, and I think that if you have success in the field and you've had it over and over again, I think you write it out and you want people to, bond together. And it's always that question of like, why is the paranormal not taken seriously? It's because we do some wacky things and we don't know what we're doing. So if we can all kind of get on a basic same page, I think that our field in general will be much more respected.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and paranormal, like, we do, yeah, do some wacky stuff, but I honestly think that makes it better. For instance, like, we'll
Yeah,
see people being videotaped and they'll run into a spider web and they'll freak out. Like,
yeah,
I find that hilarious. I mean, we might not have caught something paranormal, but we caught something more funny and that something rememberable to us. And
yeah, for sure.
especially if you
And
travel
being
with
genuine
friends.
too. Yeah, I think the more genuine you are and the more fun you have, because of course you need to be serious and when it's
Yeah,
time to do EVP sessions, whatever. Yes, but great point, and that's kind of the basis when we started. It's just having fun, being with your friends, trying to get evidence, and take it back to the basics, and let's not try to be too serious.
yeah. Is did you ever have a point in time in maybe filming or even back with your friends where you ever did something kind of silly that you haven't shared yet? Just curious, wondering out
Oh,
of curiosity.
oh yeah, yeah. Go to this is kind of embarrassing, but yeah. So, Smoke and Mirrors Paranormal was the group that I started back in 2008. We ran just me and a couple of friends. But on that website, I think if you just Google Smoke and Mirrors Paranormal, it'll come up. But there's an entire tab that's called Bloopers. Just go click on that. You'll see what we did. Uh,
I'm going to have to check this out now.
but that
Sorry.
was the point. Check it out. But that's the point. What you're saying is great. I think you'll relate when you see this. You're like, he was right. We're on the same page.
Yeah.
It's funny stuff. Like we went to Myrtle's plantation, and two of our people were standing in front of the house, and we snuck up around behind them and scared the living daylights out of them. Or one of my guys that was with us in Smoking Mirrors, he was like 6'3", 6'4". So we were walking on the plantation of Myrtle's plantation, and there was like hanging moss trees. The moss hangs real low, and it was black, pitch black. I was filming in IR, so I could see it, but he walked right into like some moss, like hitting him in
Oh
the face,
no.
and he like freaked out,
Oh no.
So all that good stuff, like we were walking, somebody threw a flip flop in front of somebody, and they tripped, just some stupid wacky stuff, but.
Right.
It's all about having fun because it was a good time with friends and it's memories that you create. And I really do think I believe this good energy together, good people together that are doing stuff for the right reasons, I think that you get more activity and you can capture better evidence when you have that kind of energy around those places.
Right. You kind of have to balance the serious and the fun. Like there's some fun moments where like, something kooky will kind of happen, but then you also have like the serious moments where you guys are going over the research and you guys are getting your data done and everyone's just kind of they're focused on the task at hand.
Yeah, well, and if you're a paranormal investigator, you know this. If you're going to go do a location, usually it's a drive. It may be
Hmm.
30 minutes, it may be 2 hours, right? So like the trip is part of the journey. So driving there, getting to the place, looking at it, setting up, doing the investigation. By the way, if you start at 6 o'clock and you're to go until 2 or 3 in the morning, that's a long time to just be sitting in the dark staring at each other. So you have to have some kind of bond, some kind of chemistry to keep your energy up throughout the night in the process. So
Right.
yeah, and I think that's why a lot of people love paranormal investigating. Is obviously yes, you want to have that thrill and capture evidence and data, but it's something like if you like to go camping or if you like to go jump out of a plane, whatever, you get that adrenaline rush. It's the same thing with the paranormal when you get into some of these buildings and some of this stuff happens. So yeah, I think having good people around you and creating good chemistry is.
I agree. Actually, just recently, me and my dad, we went to a farm and they messaged us about having some paranormal activity there. So we went to go check it out. We came over there, we were listening to fun songs in the car, singing along, jamming along. And it was probably like maybe a half hour to an hour drive over there. And we get really dark out. And so that was my first time ever investigating like outside and to watch the sun go down. It was probably like 10 o'clock at night. I heard they were telling us about like some of the places where paranormal things tend to happen. They told us that birds would like to fly like into a window, a specific window, and they would have to pick up these dead bird bodies, like maybe 4 of them like every week. And I'm like, okay, that doesn't sound very normal. And so I took a giant flashlight and like I'm in the bushes, like I'm scouring the window looking for like reflections or something. And as I'm doing this, I hear this thud from above me as a bird flies into the window right above my head.
Wow, that's
And
intense and
yeah,
random.
so they had dogs there too. And so this dog comes running towards me because I was in the bush, like right above that window. And this dog just starts sprinting at me and it's looking for this bird that just hit the window. And I'm over here like, oh no. Because I'm a shorter female. So I'm only 5'5", and this dog is, if he were
Your
to jump up
size,
on me, he could knock me over. And I was like,
right?
this is how I die. I'm gonna die
See,
in this person's bush.
that's a memory that you'll never forget. The bird and
No,
the dog.
the bird and the dog. And I just remember I got out of that bush. I'm helping this dog now look for the bird after I've like calmed down for a moment. I stepped out and walked away. And I couldn't find the bird again, so I'm not sure where that went. And the dog eventually calmed down and walked back over to its owner. And I just remember walking away with my flashlight and I told my dad what just happened. I go, there was a bird that just hit that window. And that's when he told us that, oh yeah, birds love hitting that window. We'll find dead bodies of them. I'm like, that's not normal.
That's so
That
random.
that
Well,
can't
hey,
be
that
normal.
happened just because you were there, so that was a little sign for you. You're welcome.
Yeah. So I thought it was really fun, especially like when you get kind of scared, like on one of those adventures. It just makes it all the more memorable.
It does, yeah, and that's a good point too. I always say this is not as sexy as you see on TV, obviously, because and kudos to ghost hunters and ghost
Mhm.
adventures and all the things they do, but it's a long process. They're at those locations for multiple days.
Right.
Usually they do 2 night investigations and they mesh all that stuff into 45 minutes. But uh, it is a passion, and whenever you do have something like that happen, that can drive you to the next 4, 5, 6, 7 locations where nothing happens because you remember that one thing that did happen, and something else can happen. So it's always just kind of searching for that next excitement, that next thrill.
Mhm.
And I mean, seriously, I mean that's why I've been doing this. I guess I'm getting older and older. I guess I've been doing this 14 years now, but I mean, it really is. I mean, obviously, I think I've done. I don't know how many locations, but memorable experiences is it's only a handful. But those handful of experiences, I mean, it validates everything. It was enough for me to write a book in the locations chapter. Those are the locations I chose. But that's everybody's like, well, that's some crazy stuff. I'm like, yeah, but this is over 14 years, so but it's those memories that stay, and we put ourselves into unique situations. And a lot of the people that we meet that own these mansions or these old houses, it's just interesting to meet the people who end up owning these places. Some of these places are like 9,000 square feet and it's built in like the 1800s. It's like, how did you acquire this place? And just kind of meeting those people. And that's part of the process too. It's like the trip, meeting the people, and then just investigating. So it's just, and I'm a big history lover too. So I think that helps me with the field as well because I'm obsessed with old houses and history.
Yeah. There's one thing I have a problem with people buying old houses. There's always one issue that I've always had, and that's when they have like old antiques scattered around the house, and they're like, "Oh, we like collecting them because they're old," and I'm like, "No, get it
Yeah.
away!"
Yeah. There's,
I'm like, "You wonder
there's
why
a,
your house is haunted."
there's a Facebook's. I don't know if it's a group or whatever, but it's called For the Love of Old Houses. It's one of my
Mhm.
favorite things on Facebook. But they do real estate listings, and it's
Okay.
just old houses. But it's like really cool to see some of these houses. But yeah, some of the decor inside is questionable.
Yeah. Like I've seen people, like I've gone into houses before and they'll have these like creepy like wooden carved like cat statues and I'm like,
You asking
no.
for trouble?
I'm like, ooh. Or they'll have like these old like sewn dolls. And you can tell like they're older dolls, like they've been played with and messed with, and they got like dirt and stuff on them. And it looks like one of those dolls that you could honestly, like, you've seen unboxing videos of, like, people opening things and there's mold inside. It just looks like something's going to crawl out of them. Or, like,
Yeah.
the Beanie Baby thing that happened where they were filled with spider eggs that people said online. That
Oh
was a thing.
wow.
Yeah. And I was
Well,
like, that's
I'm
all
glad I
I
missed that.
refer to whenever I think of something now. And I'm like, there's something in it. I don't want to touch it. You should probably burn it and get it out of your house. That is
Interesting.
my
Yeah.
advice. I don't care if the house is haunted. It's going to be.
And this random story, just because you were talking about this. So we every now and then, like I'll have somebody who has like a supposed haunted object, like
Mhm.
semi locally, sometimes not, but um, a lady was for causing her trouble in her house, and I was like, sure, send them over my way because I'm an idiot. And so I gave her my address, and my wife's like, "Don't give people our address." I'm like, "Yeah, that's probably smart." But anyway, so she sent the dolls, and they're small, like tiny. And I've never talked to this lady, so she sent me the dolls like 2 days later, like FedEx like shipped them quickly. So I get them, I open them, and I didn't do anything with them. I set them in the back of my car. The next day, she said, "Hey, don't do anything with those dolls. Send them back to me." And I was like, "Okay." I'm like, "I don't.
Okay.
That's fine with me." So I forgot, and the lady doesn't have a Facebook anymore. She doesn't exist.
Oh.
I swear to God, she's not
No.
on Facebook anymore. And so those dolls are. I still have them in the box. I've never done anything with them. But I'm like, what if it was an older lady? I mean, so it wasn't like a fake person, but like I don't know. I hadn't told anybody about this, by the way. So yeah, the dolls are just in my garage. I hadn't had anything happen with them because they still been in the box, but I just thought it was so odd that some lady messaged me, found me, sent me these dolls so quickly, and then just was all Facebook. Asked for them back, and then just got on Facebook.
No. That is that no situation right there.
Yeah, so that's just a daily. That's what I get in the mail every day. So
It's so
yeah.
she just like disappeared in a sense.
She's not on Facebook. Her Facebook's not, or her profile's not there anymore. You know, like if somebody deletes their Facebook, it's just like a
Yeah.
gray like silhouette. Yeah, that's what it is. I
I,
don't know.
my mind went to a dark place when you said older woman.
I don't know. I just they're still in my garage. I need to take them over to the house in between and just put them in their place if they have any.
There you go.
You know, they'll be happy over there. But yeah, they're still in the box just where they are. I just thought that was bizarre. I genuinely forgot. I checked back a week later and she just wasn't there.
If I were
But
you, I'd get like a very long, stick and I'd start pushing them and I'd build a bonfire around it and I'd light it up. Good
they
riddance.
look old. I wish I would have thought about it. I would show them to you, but I don't know where they are. But
Mhm.
I'll find them and I'll send y'all a picture of
Okay.
them.
I would love to see a picture of these horrific dolls. I hate dolls. I can't stand
They're
them. Ooh.
It's just I don't know. It's weird. She was making some very very odd claims, not your typical stuff. So it was just an intriguing situation in general, which is why I mean, genuinely, like if she was scared of the dolls, I was going to take them from her and then put
Right.
them in the house in between. So I was just doing that because she was a local situation is very peculiar.
That is definitely a weird situation. I cannot I don't have an explanation for that one.
I don't
Just
love that she has my address also. So
yeah. Next thing you know, she's just gonna be walking over asking for the
no,
doll. You see like this old, like creepy lady with like a black shawl, and she's like has like a little cane. She goes, "Where are my dolls?"
yeah. Well, when the Madison Police Department will shoot you.
There we go.
Yeah.
Be like, I don't have them anymore, and then you put them in the house in between.
I know, and
Way
like
to
I
go.
address, and I'm like, maybe I should drive them over there to her house and just drop them off and make sure she's okay. But I'm like, I just feel like that's what she wants me to do, and this is invested. This is the whole crime story we're talking about.
That is how crimes start. I mean, h- all you know, this creepy old lady is just a serial killer who's hiding, and she's just like, "Here, come over to my house. I made you cookies.
Yeah, well, that's why they're gonna
Made of
stay in the
poison."
garage. Yeah,
Just never enter someone else's home is what I've learned.
yeah,
Just
that's a
don't go
fact
in
for
there.
sure.
Yeah. Like, how scary would it be? This is just an idea now that we're going off of this story. How scary would it be if you actually drove over to her house and the house is gone?
Uh, that would be another book.
That would be another book. We'd write a whole book about this old lady.
I
That'd
would
be
just, yeah,
terrifying.
for sure.
Like, what if there were like, what if she lived in like a neighborhood and there's like houses around there and her house is just vanished? It's just gone.
I would take photos, and it would be a great book.
You could ask like
Might be another like, it'd be a whole world built around her. I'd make a whole Harry Potter world built around her.
you like ask the neighbors, be like, so do you remember this old lady who lived there? And like, there's never been a house there. Like that empty plot of land, no one's ever bought a house there. I say like the land's cursed
Yes,
or some shit. I don't know.
that's when I become a whole detective, and that's when I have to quit my job, and it just So that's why I don't go to her house. Yeah,
Fair enough. And so,
yeah.
well, we'll keep it in thought for now. How about that?
I'll holster it for now.
There we
Yeah.
go. Oh gosh, that is a creepy story. I can't stand old things, even if they're not haunted. They're still interesting to me. And you actually have a whole section in your book about cursed objects.
Hmm.
You talk about the
I do.
Annabelle doll in there, and I honestly like that you talked about the Annabelle doll because I know that it is a thought like about topic, like it is out there, but I do like how you put it in the book because it just adds more to the paranormal feel of the book in general.
It does, and you think about like Annabelle doll that from The Conjuring, is awesome. In reality, it is a Raggedy Ann doll, is what it is in real life. Um, but you really like rationally think about it. Like if you're a skeptic or you don't believe any of this stuff, like why would an intelligent entity or something that's even negative embody an object?
Right.
Whether it's a doll, whether it's a painting, like how would that work and like how does that look? Like are they conscious? Like I joked about it in the book, but it's true. It's like if you watch Chucky, the movie, the original from like the 80s, a serial killer is murdered and his soul goes into that doll and that's becomes Chucky, and like how silly that is. But I mean, that's the same thing you're talking about with Annabelle and all these haunted objects. Obviously, they can't like kill anybody like Chucky can, but the premise is there. Um, and one interesting thing that is there's a picture of the painting from a place called Mary Hope Mansion. This in Mississippi. It's a big, beautiful mansion. Um, but they never had any activity until they put this painting in the upstairs room, and then they started seeing the woman in green with her hair walking around, and there were people in tours where she would wave for them to come in her room. Her name's Eugenia, and I thought that was interesting. And then that was one of the few times we were actually in her room, and we actually caught on a still camera a shadow figure move from left to right on a wall, and it looked like her hair. You could see a shoulder and a dress. I mean, it's number one for the 14 years I've been doing it. That's the only time I've caught a pure, true shadow figure on a wall. And it looked just like her. And then the next morning, I was doing a walkthrough, like I do walkthroughs every time we investigate. I clear the house and I do a day walkthrough with a recorder and a camera, and then just thank the spirits for communicating, blah 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 blah. But we've captured some really cool stuff in the daytime, the morning after we did an investigation. Just luck, or maybe there's some science behind it. I don't know. But in her room when I was recording, I didn't hear it with my own ears, but we played it back on the video and audio. There was high heels walking behind me.
It's kind of spooky.
So I mean, yeah, for sure. Like playing it back. I mean, it's cool because I didn't hear it in real time, but yeah, there were high heels walking behind me. So with the silhouette that we captured and the high heels, it's just interesting. That's the property, but
Right.
clearly that painting or whoever's manifested that from that picture is in the house. So yeah, I think haunted objects is interesting. One of my wife's favorite pictures in the book. I'll see if I can find it. And we're the Paracons that we're going to. We're actually doing some like cool lanyards of these. But this is it's kind of bright. I don't know if you can see it, but it's the ballerina.
Okay.
Um, so this is a music box, and I got this from a lady who she sold antiques on eBay. She was widowed, and she didn't know anything about the supernatural. But a friend of her friend contacted me because she got this object, and she put it back in her back room where she keeps all her stuff she sells on eBay. Since she put it back in there, she heard a little girl laughing and a ball bouncing, and she said the music box would turn and play. It plays Happy Birthday. It's from
Right.
like the 60s. Um, so she just wanted it out of her house. So I met her and picked it up and got it. And whenever somebody gives you something they say is haunted, I mean, to be honest, it's like 90% of the time there's no I don't have any experience with it, right? Just like the dolls that are in the garage, like I hadn't had anything happen in the
Right.
house
They're still
or
creepy
near
though.
them or anything like that.
Still
They're still
creepy.
creepy, yeah, for sure. But you know, for every claim that you hear, you look into it, and every now and then, just like the house in between, you find a house that's pretty interesting.
Right.
Uh, but that music box has played just numerous by itself. You wind it up, but it will just play and it will just play. And we've had it at the house in between for a while now. And just while we're doing tours and stuff, sometimes she'll just start playing. It's the craziest thing. So it's just interesting. I don't know the rhyme or reason, and it's intriguing. Obviously, the doll that I have, she's made people jump. She's made people
Mhm.
unhappy. She's made somebody cry. I've never had anything happen personally.
Right.
It could be just your brain manifesting something. But I just think the whole genre and the whole thought process of haunted objects is very, very interesting. And I'm a rational person, and I say this, and some people don't say this, but you have to do your due diligence. Just because something's old doesn't mean it's haunted. Just because somebody says something haunted, it doesn't mean it's haunted. And you look on eBay and you see all this stuff for sale that's haunted, and these price tags, and you know, anything that becomes like pop culture or Hollywood, people are going to try to make money off of it. So
Right.
you just gotta, if you're into that kind of stuff, you collect it. You just do your due diligence, and hey, you can put them around REM pods, you can put them around your equipment, and
Sure.
stuff around them. So if you're capturing EVPs, if your devices are going off, there's ways to kind of do a validation with some of these things. But just do
Mhm.
your due diligence, and most of the time, it's not going to be haunted. But every now and then, you'll capture something or find something that has an attachment.
Now, I actually have a question about haunted objects. Do you have maybe a theory on them? So I know that some ghosts, like there are different types of ghosts out there, but something I haven't seen is haunted object ghosts. Like, because as you said, like some of these things, like we can see all around like the property, and it can just be coming from one item, and other times it's the item itself that's being haunted. So, like, there's definitely like variations of these things, but as far as I know, no one's ever done like a category for them.
Right, great question. So, and that's the question about haunted objects is like, how does that look? So, like, if you are an intelligent spirit or you're something that's not walked the earth, that you decide to, and let's just use a doll because that's like one of the more common things that people say
Right.
are haunted. So, like, you attach to this vessel, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, in theory, if you are an intelligent spirit, instead of haunting a place, walking around a room looking at stuff, is it in your head? Maybe you're thinking like, if I incorporate myself into this doll, will I be loved? Will I be picked up? Will a child hold
Mm-hmm.
me? Will I stay around longer and be more relevant than if I'm stuck in this building that may be destroyed and then there's nothing here but just land? So
Okay.
that's just a thought process for me. I mean, because I don't know why else it would make sense. So that's the only rationality that I think.
I so what about here's another thing to add on to that. What if like maybe like a child had like this precious toy and like maybe they kept it as they got older, they could manifest into that, like a beloved object of theirs that they wanted to keep with them maybe?
Right. Yeah, and that's the thing. Yeah, so something that's tangible that won't be destroyed or won't be forgotten. And I
Okay.
think that's one of the things. Like, if you don't want to leave, it's like if you're stubborn and you are a ghost, you don't go to the light, whatever. It's like, are you
Right.
staying with an object because you think it's going to have some memento? Just like the painting. I mean, it kind of makes sense if it was a painting. It's like, that's a beautiful painting. Hopefully, that'll be something that's cherished and loved, and people look at and they show attention to. If it's a doll, somebody's picking you up and holding you, you're giving them that energy. And I think that the spirits need the energy to interact. So maybe that's why they want to attach to an object also, is because you're giving physical energy to it.
Okay. Also, have you ever heard that Egyptians they will keep the items, or they'll be buried with their items so that they can transfer over to the dead with them? Have you heard about that? I wonder if
Yes,
it's
I
a
have.
similar scenario sometimes with the objects as well. Like where they're like, I want to keep hold of this and I want to hold it tight forever and this is mine. And I wonder if like some spirits get possessive of the object so that when someone takes it or moves it around, they get angry, which causes
That's
the
a
normal events.
That's a great point of view, and I've never thought about it like that. But that's a good analogy with the Egyptians because that's exactly what they used to do. Is they
Yeah.
wanted to keep that with them because they transfer it to the next life.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
like
I
that.
thought of that. I was like, huh. But
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean that makes sense too because obviously the painting like Eugenia you just talked about that
Mhm.
that was a portrait, so the spirit looks like that person, so it could have
Right.
been their favorite object because that was an old painting from the 1800s because then it takes a lot of time. They didn't, it's not like us taking selfies. Whenever
Mhm.
you had a portrait done, that was like a long process and it wasn't cheap either. So maybe that was something that she loved when she died. That's where she manifested and she wanted to hold on to that. So great theory. I love it.
Yeah. Honestly, I find haunted objects really fascinating because, like, again, there's not like extensive, like, there is extensive research done on these objects, but they're not categorized. And I think we
Yeah.
should probably do
Well,
more research into doing that
yeah,
rather than
I agree
objects
because
themselves.
it's so it's just a one note, like a one off, like haunted objects. You know what I mean? Whether it's like a baby rattle or like a portrait or like a toy car or something like that. Because there's so many different objects that could be haunted, should be
Right.
categorized, and then really understand why. I think
Mhm.
that's the biggest thing is like kind of validation. Whenever we go to a location, we validate whether it's haunted or not based on
Right.
EVPs and energy and devices and things moving. Same thing with the objects. Like I was saying earlier, do your due diligence. Don't just assume something's haunted because it's old or you heard stories. So I agree.
Yeah. See, I have the thing where I don't care if it's haunted or not. If it looks old, we should probably just get rid of it. If it's to the point in which it's old and
Yeah, I
creepy,
love it.
just push it out the window. It's fine. It's gone. We'll
It's
just get it.
cool. Like yeah, so yeah, my wife got me for my birthday. She we were starting to collect a few dolls and stuff like that just randomly. She found one in I think Sweden. It was like found in a barn, but it was like a Swedish lady, but it was old.
Mhm.
Just the characters. They sent some notes with them and stuff like that. But yeah, even if they're not haunted, it's just neat to get these things from across the world and people's stories because they hand wrote stories about the dolls and the experience they
Right.
had and stuff. And it was neat. And one object we got, we definitely incorporated it into the house in between, but we'll see that later on.
Okay. I'm excited to see that then.
Yeah,
Yeah. I think I do have this like weird fear of like dolls, especially, and that may stem from the fact that I used to have a bunch of porcelain dolls. And I actually had them set up. I had this big mirror that would lay right in front of my bed, which is probably bad setup in general. But they would
yeah,
sit all like right next to my mirror. And I just remember one night I couldn't sleep and I felt like something was just staring at me and I had all of these porcelain doll eyes looking at me. After that they went into my closet.
yeah. I
And
understand
I
that, and like dolls. I don't. It'd be good. I'm gonna Google whenever we finish this, like when the doll was created. But
mhm,
I have to assume dolls have been around for probably 300 years,
probably more
maybe
than
longer.
that.
Yeah, probably more than that. So, I mean, that's unique. It's the same thing with music. Music's one of my equipment things that I
Right.
use all the time because it's the universal language. Whether you're playing, period music from when the person died, or whether you're playing music now, I think that the notes, and I do a lot of instrumental stuff because that can invoke energy, not just with the spirits, but the people in the room. There was a video that I didn't pull, and I wish I would have. We were having a tour at the house in between.
Mhm.
We had the DVR camera set up, and I do an instrumental song, but it goes into what is it? Queen is like it's one of the Queen songs, like one of their famous songs. If you don't know, ask your dad. It's
I
what
know
is it? I'm trying to think. What song is it? Oh man, it's a long. Oh, Bohemian Rhapsody. I'm sorry. So anyway, a great historical song, but it's like a violin version of that. But I
Okay.
play that specifically, not just for the house, but like there was like 9 or 10 people in the house. They were in different rooms. You can see cameras. And when they realized the violin's going into Bohemian Rhapsody, you could see everybody's like energy like perk up and like they're singing and stuff like that. And I do that for a reason because I feel like it really does connect everybody for that moment and kind of heightens a burst of energy out. And I know that sounds silly, but at the end of the day, we've had some really good results from that. So that's why, like what we're talking about, music is such a universal thing. And same thing with dolls. It's one of those things where, whether you're a man, whether you're a woman, whether you were a little child, like that's something that's like iconic that you know what it is. You know, it's not harmful, it's not going to hurt you. So I do think that's why that's more associated with a haunted object than anything because it's been around for so long.
Right. Actually, the music thing, it makes sense. And so music is actually, it goes along with people's emotions as well. So this can also trigger emotions in not only people, but spirits as well. So that usually tends to like, get people like kind of pumped up, like ready for the day type of thing. Or if you're playing more sadder ones, it kind of, you'll see people's energies kind of drain. So
Yep,
it's really interesting to involve music within the paranormal. It honestly should be used more because it's a very interesting concept to use.
it is. And I mean, that I have had really good success with that. So I wanted to make sure. And I did the old style, like music record player up, but I've always been a very big music person. Music's very, very important to me. So it helps me tap in. Just me as an investigator, like before I do an investigation while we're getting set up, I like to center myself. I get music pumping, something that gets me flowing in my head. And yeah, it's important to me. So I feel like it's important to everybody else. And again, even if I go to Germany or I go to Spain, wherever, I feel like if you're playing music and it's like it doesn't have to be instrumental, but I do a lot of instrumental stuff. Like that's going to connect no matter where you're going to investigate.
Right. As you said, music is the universal language. And
It
honestly,
is.
it is. Everyone knows about music. All different cultures have a different type of music, and it's some way incorporated into everyday life.
Yep, for sure.
I actually wanted to go over this with you, but what made you want to call it Smoke and Mirrors Paranormal? Because I'm pretty sure we talked about this before, but I wanted to bring it up again.
Yeah. So funny story about this. I met Chip Coffey, and if you don't know who he is, he was on Paranormal State for a long time. He's a very famous medium. He's on Kindred Spirits now.
Mhm.
Great guy. But when I met him in person, he came to the house in between. He's like, he liked me, but he's like, I hate your name. He's like, Smoke and Mirrors Paranormal. He's like, that's the terrible name. So it's a play on words, obviously. So
Yeah.
smoke and mirrors means that it's like it's smoke and mirrors. It's not real. So why I wanted to do that is to kind of just show that there is a lot of smoke and mirrors, but what we're putting out is the truth. So, and it just kind of spoke to me. I have a marketing mind. That's what I do is marketing. So I'm always thinking, that I just liked it. It was different. It wasn't like Mississippi Paranormal or like Madison Paranormal. It was just, I like smoke and mirrors and I like the art that I did with it and all that good stuff. So it just stuck with me. I like something again that's simple, less is more, but it's a conversation piece. If people ask you why, and that's a good question, why is
Mhm.
it Smoke and Mirrors Paranormal? It's a play on words because this still is thought about as a joke. A lot of people anybody can be a paranormal investigator, and unfortunately, a lot of people abuse what we do.
Mhm.
There's people on TikTok. Don't get me started, and I'm sure there's some good people on TikTok who are trying to get likes and views, and they're just doing some really stupid stuff, and it just muddles what we're trying to do, what we're trying to do. So we're trying to mix science with the paranormal and trying to show the devices that we use and trying to get some rationality of like this stuff is real. There's so many people who have experienced the paranormal. If you talk to 10 people, I always say I think 8 out of 10 have either had an experience or know somebody who's had an experience. So there's
Right.
got some truth behind that. And yeah, so I just thought it was kind of funny. I'm just kind of a smart ass sometimes. So Smoking Mirrors Paranormal is my team name.
And if I remember correctly, you did this with your friends, right? You
Yep.
guys have a group of friends. How did your friends think of this name? I'm very curious on that. When you came up with the idea, what did they think about it?
So my two friends, they were not into this at all in general, but they were good friends. They knew that I had a passion for it. Um, and one person was a very historical kind of person, so they did a lot of research and background and stuff, so that helped me out. And then the other person was into like the audiovisual stuff, so he was a techie kind of guy. So it kind of worked out
Okay,
randomly.
well, there you go.
Um, yeah, so like you do this, I'm going to be here. But they were kind of okay with anything. I remember we were trying to come up with a name the first night we ever did an investigation. 2008 was at King's Tavern in Natchez. I think we talked about that before. Um, and that's where we went, where we didn't know what we were doing, and we actually caught a door opening and an incredible EVP, and it was just like an epiphany for me. It just set me on this trajectory of like, I wasn't crazy as a child. This is real, and I want to do this forever. And so on the way home, it was probably 2 in the morning because Natchez from here is like 2.5 hours. So yeah, we probably got home at like 3 or 4 in the morning. But we were just kind of staying awake and throwing names out there because we were like, this is insane. Because they weren't skeptics, but they didn't not believe. They were just like whatever, right?
Okay.
But they experienced the door opening with me and the boys, so they were just kind of shocked, like I was. So they like after that night, they were in it with me. They're like, "This is insane. He's not crazy." So we were kind of bouncing names off each other, and on that drive home, we came up with Smoke and Mirrors, and it's stuck ever since.
What are some places that you that didn't make the book?
What are some what? I missed the question. I'm sorry.
What are some places that didn't make the book? So places that you kind of left out for a certain reason, or maybe like they didn't have enough like paranormal experiences to write about. So kind of places like those that didn't get the cut.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of places that we've gone to that just didn't have any like paranormal activity.
Right.
We've gone to some really cool mansions and really old houses. One of the mansions we went to had like an underground tunnel and stuff like that, but we just didn't get anything there. Visually, it's beautiful. It's a really cool
Right.
place. We went to a small little town that had a morgue that we investigated. They turned into a gym that they claimed they had activity. And we went upstairs, and apparently we discovered that this mortician had been taking their. I don't know if this is standard practice or not. So morticians out there, if this is normal, I don't know. But he was taking their shoes off. So this
Okay.
was like from the 1880s to like 1920. But there was like, I mean, 300 pairs of old shoes that before they would cremate them, they took their shoes off, and all the shoes were up in this attic. It was the
Oh
craziest thing because these were
no.
all dead people's shoes.
No. Oh no. Why do
Yeah,
you do
I was like,
that?
I think I had pictures of that still. I know I took because there was this old like it looked like a witch's shoe, but yeah. So anyway,
No.
but again, we didn't really have a lot of activity there. But like we've been in some
Yeah.
really odd places before. Um, I don't know, like that place stands out to me because it was just this weird town. Everybody in it was like staring at us. I felt like we were like gonna be murdered. And
Oh
like
my
this,
goodness.
I don't know. It was just really, and the owner was just strange and like I don't know. It was, and again, it was a morgue, but they turned it into a gym. So there was like tanning beds in there and like workout equipment. But then like upstairs was like some of the old funeral stuff was still there and like all the shoes. And again, we didn't have anything happen, so I didn't write
Right.
about it. But that's still just one of the things that stands out to me. I was like, this place is weird as hell. Like, let's
Oh,
finish what we're doing here and let's go ahead and get out of here.
that is what would make so they turned it into a gym. So
Right.
that means that they kind of started to renovate, get some new things in here. But they left some of like the actual stuff in the house, like
They
upstairs.
yeah, they basically took everything that was downstairs, like some of the equipment, like the embalming equipment, and like the table that you would lay them on and stuff, and they moved it all in the attic. And then the shoes were up there, so yeah, like all that stuff was still there. There was a ton of stuff up there. It was really
No,
creepy. It's bad.
no,
It was bad juju upstairs. Just the
bad
shoes.
juju.
It was just crazy. I mean, like you think about 300 pairs of shoes. That's a lot of shoes. It was a big mountain of shoes up there. And then they're like, yeah, they apparently took the shoes off before they cremated them. They just threw them in this pile. I'm like, well, that's not normal.
Like, were the owners like weirded out by it or not? Like, or are they just
they
like okay with this massive amount of stuff up in their attic? Like,
they seemed fine because attached to the mortuary where the gym was, like still attached to the building was like where they lived. So it was like all one complex. Yeah, it's real strange.
they're just okay with that? You have 300 pairs of shoes in your attic from dead people.
I'm like, why don't you like clear that out and throw those away? Like, are you keeping those for like a
Yeah,
reason? Like, I mean, just rational
yeah.
for me. Like, the bigger equipment may be harder to get out and dispose of, but like the shoes, like I can get you some trash bags and we can
Like,
take
is
care
it
of that in
like a
like 30
talking
minutes.
piece? do you think, for them? Like, people come into their home, that like, their friends or something, and be like, "Hey, you want to see the attic?" Like, you think it's
Maybe
just like
they
a
invited
top?
us, so maybe so. I don't know.
I mean, you said it's like a weird town too, so like I wouldn't put the people against it and be like, "Hey, come see my attic. It has like 300 pairs of dead people's shoes and like some other cool instruments of
Yeah, it was weird
mortician."
because I feel like everybody in the town knew why we were there. Like we stopped in a gas station, got some food and stuff like that. And I mean, I don't dress like weird. Like I wear my
Yeah.
black V-necks and my skinny jeans, and like I probably don't look like most people that come through that. I think there's a population of like 800. I mean, it's a
Okay.
tiny little town. So, but yeah, it was a weird place. And then the other thing that pops into my head, we didn't do a lot of residential places. Um, like one place we went to, the reason I don't do a lot of residential places, whenever people would contact us, obviously a lot of people think their houses are haunted, but they're not. Um, a lot of people could be going through like psychiatric stuff or like a divorce. Like
Hmm.
I've had people, I've had some really weird and dark stuff go on, but it's not supernatural. It's like people, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like their issues that they're going on. But one lady called and she was on the coast in Mississippi, probably like 3 hours away, and she had two small children. And we have a questionnaire that we would do. So I asked the same questions, but I
Okay.
asked them in different forms so I can tell if you're lying. Because I can ask you the same question in a few forms, and if you stumble, then I'll kind of like I'm like, But
Okay.
she answered the questionnaire. She seemed legit. She was honestly terrified. There's something dark in her house. So we went down to her house 3 hours, and we get there, and we walked into the house, and we should have called child services. The house was the most filthy thing I've ever seen. Like, I mean, I just wanted to get out of there. Like we talked to the kids, and like we were like, "Hey, you are okay? You're safe. There's nothing here." And then we pieced out. And then after that, I was like, "We're never doing a proper residence again. Like this is it." Luckily, the beach was close there, so we left the house and went to the beach. And we had a good beach
Well,
weekend.
there. So
Um,
it wasn't all bad.
it wasn't all bad, but there's a lot of stories I have that just weren't paranormal related, so they didn't make it in the book. I specifically put places in there that were relevant to the book, relevant supernatural and all that stuff. But and luckily that was before Alice's house, because I had a friend of a friend call me whenever I was introduced to Alice, I mean I was kind of timid because we had some bad stuff happen with private residences. Because I'm not trying to be mean, but in general, people were kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of weirdos out there. So
Yeah. I mean, it is kind of hard to trust people in the paranormal field because you want to go explore these houses, like you want to believe that there's something there. But some of these people are just a little iffy.
well, yeah, I mean, and like another quick story is like we did something with a news anchor that was local at the time, which has become a great friend. But he was a great journalist. He was doing paranormal local TV in like the '90s. He actually won an Emmy award from the news station from covering like haunted. He would do like haunted trips and stuff like that, and put them in like little news stories. Really great guy. And so he had a Halloween news story coming up. He's like, "Hey, y'all come do an investigation." So he found the guy, and we met him at this location. And I was like, the cameraman was this guy who was like not feeling the paranormal. Like he was like horrified to be around anything spooky.
Oh
So like,
no.
but we got to the location, and it was like this. I don't know. I gotta be careful how I say things. So they lived under power lines, and the guy was
Right.
insane, and there was nothing haunted about it. He was just crazy. He's like, a ghost picked up my wife and threw her against the fence. I'm like, pretty sure he's hammered. I'm pretty sure he got hammered and threw her against the fence. I'm like, I was looking at the news anchor. I'm like, okay, let's get out here. so
Yeah.
so there's
Oh,
a lot of stories like that are funny and humorous, but they just weren't paranormal related. So,
right.
but again, to what you said earlier, these are experiences that I would never, take for granted. I'm glad we did every one of them. There's a lot of dead ends in this field. There's a
Mhm.
lot of times you go to places you don't get anything, but you have to just enjoy the experience, enjoy what you're doing, and throughout the process, if you keep at it long enough, you'll get some really cool evidence.
I feel so bad for people when they're like the cameraman for like a paranormal investigation and you know that they're they're so scared of like anything paranormal related, or they get scared easy. At those points, I wonder if we should get like another cameraman just to film him, and we put it on like funniest home videos or something.
Yeah.
I know that sounds so mean, but
And,
sometimes I think about that because
and
it would make for some funny scenes.
and the great so Kendall Welton, who's the cinematographer and producer for The House in Between, who's awesome. He did The Sleepless Unrest. He was a cameraman on Ghost Hunters for pretty much all their original seasons, and so it was neat to see because he's been to I think he's been to 200 or 300 locations with
Mhm.
Ghost Hunters, and it was neat to see. He's never had something happen in front of his face like he had at the House in Between. So you watch the end of it where the baseball comes down, he starts like tiptoeing and freaking out. So that was neat, and we're honored that that was the one time he had something happen directly in front of his face. So
There we go.
yeah,
Oh, I feel so bad for him because he must have been so scared.
he was, but he's so excited. I like you need to be on camera more. He's hilarious. He was tiptoeing and running, and he gets so excited. His energy is just so high. So he's great. We love Kendall.
I feel like it's like scared excited, where you're like, I want to film more, but at the same time, I want to back away.
Yeah. Well, your brain
Yeah,
tries to like rationalize it, but it's like this is what you're
yeah,
here. You want to dive into it, but then like there's only so much you can take until where you push back.
right.
Yeah.
It's so fun though. Let's see. What else do I have for you? I think you've almost covered all of my questions, whether I've asked them or not. In fact, I added more questions into here.
I talk a lot, and then I will say one thing that
Hmm.
the reason this is called a peek through the veil because sometimes people ask me. So obviously I don't consider myself a medium. I think there's people out there that have the ability. I do not. But if you watch The House in Between, there's a clip in there where you hear me hear something in the graveyard. So ever since I was a young kid, I would hear things. I would see shadow figures. I think we've talked about that before. So kind of what I've coined my phrase and what I've experienced my whole life is I get a peek through the veil. So I'll be able to hear stuff sometimes. I'll be able to see stuff, but I can't hone it. So
Hmm.
that just kind of sums up what I've experienced and what kind of brought me to where I am right now. So
Right. And I mean,
that's
even in the book you talk about, it's one of the very first things that are in there is how you don't remember this as a kid, but you actually flatlined for a period of
hmm
time.
yep,
And I don't know if I perceived it as this, but it kind of perceives it as could this be like a reason for why you are acceptable to the paranormal?
right, yeah, for sure. And you hear about that. You hear about people, you know, having those near death experiences, and then their
Mhm.
window open more after that. And I mean, you hear that all the time. It's the same thing where whenever like a relative dies or something like that, they see them at the end of their bed, or they knew they died right, even before they got the phone call.
Yeah.
Some relevance to that. I think that it is possible when we do pass. I mean, do we have that instant burst of energy where we can go comfort that person that's
Mhm.
closest to us to let them know that, hey, we're okay? We do an imprint in their head so they remember us, whatever it is. But yeah, same thing. I mean, I don't know, but I think it is interesting at least that I flatline. Obviously, I was too young to remember it, but I'm weird, and there's
You're not
there's some
weird.
reason. But it's neat. But I've been able to validate it, and
Mhm.
going through this process and being in the field and using the electronics and the technology that's available to us now, it's been able to kind of validate the things I've experienced, and I think that's important.
Mhm. Yeah. And I mean, there are so many people out there again with like these life or death experiences, and this, again, like as you said, their window's just like a little bit more open. They're just a little bit more su- susceptible, acceptable to
Yeah,
the paranormal,
yeah, for sure.
hmm which can make for some really good stories and podcasts if you get into
Uh,
it.
Apparently so. Yeah. So this is good stuff. But no, I think the book was it was challenging to write. I think it turned out really well. I'm happy with the artwork and the stories, and I think again I wanted it to be an easy read. I wanted it to be heavy visuals, and it's fun to just kind of look through, and I'm working on another project right now, another book. So I'm excited for people to be able to see that. It's going to take a while to get it done, but I'm really really excited about it.
Book two.
Book
So
two.
are you gonna call it Peek Through the Veil Book Two? Is that what it's gonna be called?
It is not a peek through the veil
Okay.
book two. It's weird. I've had 14 years in the field, and this is pretty much my personal stories and my thoughts
Mhm.
that I put all that in that book. And I've had a few different ideas for a second book. After I wrote this book, I was like, I'm never going to write another book. That was awful. So, because like once you're in it and like you commit to doing it, and like I've put the money and the finances into like the artwork and having a couple proofreaders proofread it and correct all my stuff
Right.
because I'm a terrible writer. So they had to create and correct a lot of stuff. Um, it was it was stressful. I mean, it really was. Like I enjoyed it and I'm happy with the result. But like, the easiest stuff to write was great, like the house in between and like my backstory because it's me.
Right.
But then there's other stuff like the locations, like because I wanted to think, it's easy to tell a story about yourself, but then when you're
Mhm.
talking about like a location, like I wanted to paint some kind of picture, and that's what great authors do. Like uh,
Right.
whoever wrote Harry Potter, I can't remember,
Harry.
J.K. Rowling, or
Yeah,
yeah.
J.K. I believe.
So, painting those visual pictures so you can read the story lives. I mean, that's what great writers do, and I'm not a great writer. So, like when it came to locations, I needed to give a backstory, give some history, so you can kind of understand what the place is about, and then tell you my experience. So that stuff was harder to do for me. And then talking about like doppelganger and stuff like that, it was something I thought was really cool. That was really interesting in the field, but where did that term originate? What's the backstory? And then how is it relevant into the paranormal field? And kind of meshing all that together because I didn't want to just, it's a cool idea. I can create a cool picture like that, but then making the writing make sense it was a lot harder than I thought.
Right. I mean, that is the struggle of writing a book. I've dabbled in writing a little bit back in high school, but it was always so hard for me to stay focused on it. I can only imagine how hard that would have been for you.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was. Once I started it was definitely a passion to finish it. So I'm glad I did it. Then the second book is going to be easier because it's something I really enjoy, and again, it's going to be very heavy visuals. So I'm excited.
Ooh. Am I gonna have to do another podcast on you
I
with this
think
book?
so. I think so because I think you're really going to like the second book. I think
Okay.
it's going to be really interesting. Yeah.
I'm very excited to read it then.
Yes. Thank you.
All right. I don't think I have any more questions for you that we haven't already covered. I think you
Why?
I think you've nailed all of my questions all the way down the list of my whole page.
I talk a lot, so that's on me. So, but no, I appreciate you having me on. And if anybody wants the book, they can go to johnbullardpara.com, rent the house in between, buy the house in between. They can buy the book. So I figured a website, and
Both.
all my other previous podcast interviews are on there. So once we release this one, I'll put this link on there too, so they can listen to this over and over.
Yes. Guys, go read the book. This thing is awesome. And go watch The House in Between. All of this stuff is absolutely amazing. You guys
Thank you.
read
Thank you
it.
so much.
And with that, ParaAmera signing off.